Hello everyone, it's Micah, and on today's Bakeaway, we're going to progress to bake number 5. I don't know how long I'm going to keep numbering these. It's going to seem weird if I say bake number 78, but right now we're still low enough that it doesn't sound awkward. This was the 5th bake that I did, and it was from Zoe Francois' Craftsy series that you can find on Great Courses Plus. And as I mentioned with my last video, where I went over the biscuit recipe that I prepared as my bake number 4, this is an instructional series. So this is about foundational recipes. So this is just a simple, straightforward muffin recipe. Again, from Zoe Francois. So I want to give credit. And with that being said, let us get started. So the muffins had a surprisingly large number of ingredients. You think it's a muffin, like how much stuff could you need? And turns out this is how much stuff you need. Again, this is me with my innovation of the pre-mise en place. And this pre-prep involved me hauling out all of the ingredients in the containers and the things that I'm going to need to prep everything. This took about I would say an hour, which is down from about 90 minutes or more with earlier recipes with this many ingredients. So I got a little bit better, and I may have come in a little under an hour on this. I was starting to get into a little bit of rhythm of pulling out ingredients and going through the recipe and understanding what was needed. So this is all my stuff, basically all the ingredients on the right and all the baking stuff to the left. And I opted to do raspberries in this recipe. The recipe calls for your choice of berries, and so those were the ones I saw. They were actually the cheapest one at the market. So I thought, well, if I'm going to make this recipe for the first time, I should probably do it with something that is cheaper rather than more expensive. Plus, cheaper usually means in season, which means better quality. So there's that. The 2 lemons there that you see, those are 2 lemons and an egg that you see resting in the muffin tins. This is a little hack. I hate using the word hack capriciously, because people do that now. Anything that you do, regardless of how unoriginal or how silly it is to do it, people call it a hack. But this was, of course, for a round ingredient that might otherwise roll off the counter. Especially, you don't want the egg to do that. The lemons are there for zest, and the egg is there to be an egg in a baking recipe like it usually does. So that's that. And this, about, I'm going to guess 30 minutes later, was my full MEP with all the ingredients measured out and the baking cups in the baking tin and everything ready to go. This was, as you can probably see from the order of the ingredients there, this is probably my most successful prep work to date. It felt very controlled, very organized, and it didn't take me too long to get there. So I'm trying to see where the butter was in my pre-prep. I actually don't see it out. Maybe I didn't have the butter out yet. But I think I missed the butter because I had it in the microwave. So you can see in the very, very center is melted butter, which is part of this recipe. And there's also vegetable oil. So here's what I can identify from memory on this. There's flour on the upper right, sugar on the upper left. All of the baking soda, baking powder, salt is behind the flour in the very back, very difficult to see. Then in the middle there is the melted butter. Then there's buttermilk, egg. I think that's vanilla in the small metal ramekin. And then we have, I don't know, I think that's the sugar in the very front, and then vegetable oil and in the raspberries. I think it's, you know what, the very back is a mix again, just like with the biscuits, a mix of cake flour and all-purpose flour. That's seemingly Zoe's go-to for ensuring that her baked goods are both have structural integrity and are also tender. Half baked, half all-purpose flour, half cake flour. All right, and so then once you have all that prep work done, it really gets simple, and Zoe in her recipe definitely puts an emphasis on doing it quick and easy. So basically you combine all the dry ingredients in one bowl, you combine all the wet ingredients in the other, and then you see there's the lemon zest in front of the dry ingredients, and there's the raspberry still in the package. So the next step is going to be to toss the raspberries and the lemon zest in the dry ingredients. That reduces the amount of time that the flour is exposed to the moisture, so the gluten has less time to develop, and therefore the muffins are more tender. See, it sounds like I know what I'm talking about, right? And so this is when I first dumped the dry ingredients with the raspberries mixed into the wet ingredients, and then you just stir them until they're combined. Fold them just until combined. So this took maybe a minute or two, tops. And this keeps the muffins tender. And then I spooned them into the muffin tins. As you can see, I was not painstaking about putting an equal amount of batter into each muffin tin. I didn't really have the expertise, given how thick my muffin batter was, to be able to do this without fussing over it for half an hour. And since time is of the essence, my understanding is that once your flour gets moisture in it, it immediately starts building those gluten bonds and starts becoming tough. So you don't want to fuss with it too much, either from a mechanical mixture perspective or from a time perspective. You just don't want to fuss with it. You want to get it baking before it has time to start forming all those gluten strands and then making your bread tough. Now, if I've misinterpreted that guidance in any way, please let me know in the comments. But that's what my understanding is. And since the batter was so thick and you're measuring them into the same muffin tin, there was no quick way for me to measure these out with any sort of precision. It's not like I could weigh these out. Like I was able to weigh, when I was making cookies, I could weigh each cookie after I formed it on the scale to make sure it was the right measurement, but I didn't have any similar fail-safe here. So inconsistent sized muffins. However, once they baked, they became a lot more uniform, and so this is the finished product out of the oven. I'm getting better and better at working with my oven, and that's part of what going through these multiple bakes is about. Not just about making different things and learning about different recipes and how they work, but also about getting to know my oven. And it turns out my oven is lazy. It wants to tell you it's at a certain temperature, but it's really about 50 to 80 degrees below the temperature that it's telling you that it is. I have my little tattletale, the oven thermometer in there, which helps me out. And so I was able to, I'm able to get closer to the real recipe. The other thing is, in this recipe, the trick that Zoe uses is she has you preheat the oven to a much higher temperature than what you want the muffins to bake at. And then as soon as you put the muffins in, you reduce the temperature, which is perfect for this oven. That's what it likes to do anyway. So that helped out with making this recipe turn out exactly as intended in the amount of time, in the amount of bake time that was prescribed in the recipe. So, I think the reasoning behind the high to low temperature is that, again, you want to catch the dough and get it to rise and form its general structure quickly with the high heat, but then you don't want it to burn. So once it has that basic structure, then you can chill out on the heat a little bit, and, well, pun intended, I guess, and then it will continue to cook through, but you don't have to worry at this point about the tenderness of the product. So this is how they turned out. And this is me putting them on the cooling rack, and I don't know if that one tried to escape. I can't remember why I have one out there like that. Maybe that's just the one I decided to sample first. And then here is the crumb of the muffin after I cut into it, and I think that's textbook. I think it looks perfect to me. I probably let out an audible gasp when I cut into that, because it seems like absolutely perfect. You want that kind of, this is technically a quick bread. There was also an option in the recipe to make this as a loaf, in which it would have more visually seemed like a quick bread, but a muffin is a quick bread in essence. So it's tender, but also has a breadiness to it at the same time. And although honey, you know what, there was honey in this. That was something I didn't point out in the original bake, and I'm remembering in the original, when I was talking about the ingredients I used, there was honey in this. And the reason is because looking at this picture takes me back to the flavor profile that when I bit into the muffin, the honey is fairly prominent in the recipe. It tastes very healthy with the honey and the raspberries and the overall breadiness and crumb in the structure of it. It gives you the impression of being healthy. It's not incredibly healthy. There's no fiber in this, but it gives you kind of that impression. And I think this is why muffins have gotten a pass from people over the years as passing for a healthy food, but they're really not. They're basically dessert. You put a little fruit in it and you put a little honey in it, and it makes it taste a lot more natural. This is not a flavor profile that I crave when I'm going for desserts, but it was delightful and I enjoyed it, and I felt like this was the first bake where I don't really have any notes for myself. I think that I executed my prep, my setup, my baking with the complete precision that was needed to make it turn out well, and I really have no notes for myself on it. It turned out really well, and I put several of the muffins in the freezer, so I am going through them very slowly and having them every few days. I'm pulling one out of the freezer and heating in the microwave for a few seconds to thaw it and to get it, and they're just as good as new. And each time I have one, I'm like, wow, this really turned out well. So this one was a good bake for me, and I think it's always going to be an evolution, but this might be the turning of the corner between me being this overly precise, frantic novice to beginning to feel comfortable in what I'm doing, genuinely comfortable in what I'm doing in the kitchen. So I really enjoyed doing this bake. So today's bakeaway is, I'm getting there.